Genetic engineering has reshaped our understanding of life, offering incredible breakthroughs alongside complex ethical dilemmas. Life can't be simple, can it? There's a fine line between progress and consequence, and nowhere is this more evident than in the world of human genetics. While studies on plants and animals spark less controversy because people care less about them, human stories bring to light some of the most captivating and tragic examples. Take the blue-skinned Fugates of Kentucky, whose rare genetic condition turned them into legends. Or the Habsburg dynasty, where generations of intermarriage led to pronounced and devastating jaw deformities. The outcomes of inbreeding can be as fascinating as they are unsettling, if not more so. Get ready to explore everything from the tightly bound Spanish royals to the unusual practices of ancient Egypt. For, like alcoholism and speaking more than one language, inbreeding is one of the few things the richest in society have in common with the poorest. As we uncover, these are the 7 most inbred people in history. Genetic engineering has revolutionized our understanding of life, balancing incredible progress with ethical challenges. Human genetics, in particular, reveals both fascinating and tragic stories. From the blue-skinned Fugates of Kentucky, believe me, it's not makeup or paint, Paul Chris's skin is a deep blue-purple color, to the Habsburg dynasty's inbreeding-related deformities, history shows the unsettling outcomes of genetic isolation. Surprisingly, inbreeding spans all social classes, from ancient Egyptian pharaohs to impoverished communities. Here are 12 of history's most inbred people of all time. Number 12, Charles and the Habsburg jaw. When you think of royal bloodlines, you might imagine wealth, beauty, and power. But for one king, royal blood meant tragedy, deformity, and suffering. Meet Charles II of Spain, the most inbred royal in history. Born in 1661, Charles didn't stand a chance. His family, the Habsburgs, had been marrying close relatives for generations. They believed that mixing their bloodline with outsiders would weaken their power, so they kept it all in the family. By the time Charles came into the world, the damage was already done. His mother was his aunt, and his father was his uncle. Yes, Charles was the product of a niece and uncle's marriage. The Habsburgs' obsession with maintaining their bloodline had terrifying consequences for Charles. From the very beginning, his life was filled with unimaginable physical and mental challenges. He inherited the infamous Habsburg jaw, a protruding chin that made it nearly impossible for him to chew or speak properly. But that was just the beginning. Charles also had developmental delays, struggled with epilepsy, and started going bald by his 30s, much earlier than most men. But the worst was yet to come. After his death at just 38 years old, doctors performed an autopsy, and what they found was truly shocking. They discovered that his heart was the size of a peppercorn and his internal organs were badly damaged. But perhaps the most bizarre detail was that Charles had only one testicle, and it was blackened. Some of this might sound like exaggerated horror stories, but it's clear that Charles had been dealt a devastating genetic hand. But there's more to his story that's even sadder. Charles could not produce an heir. He married twice, but both unions failed to result in children. Historians and doctors today suggest a variety of reasons: genetic kidney disorders, malfunctioning glands, and other health issues could all have been factors. But whatever the cause, the result was the same: the Habsburg dynasty in Spain came to a crashing end. Charles's inability to carry on the royal line sealed the fate of one of the most powerful families in Europe. His tragic life stands as a stark reminder of what can happen when power and genetics are twisted together in dangerous ways. His death marked not just the loss of a king but the end of a dynasty. Number 11, King Tutankhamun. King Tutankhamun, the young Egyptian pharaoh, remains one of history's most intriguing figures. But his life was plagued by severe health problems that may have been linked to inbreeding within his royal family. Recent studies have uncovered shocking details about his condition, which paint a picture of a young king whose body was ravaged by genetic disorders. King Tut's most striking affliction was his debilitating club foot, which made walking impossible without the aid of canes, 130 of them, to be exact. But that was just the beginning. CT scans of his mummy revealed that Tut also suffered from scoliosis, a cleft palate, and an active case of malaria, which likely contributed to his premature death at just 19 years old. To make things worse, his left foot was also deteriorating due to a degenerative disease that weakened his bones. This made his mobility even more difficult. So what caused these serious health issues? Experts believe Tut's health was severely affected by inbreeding, a common practice among royal families in ancient Egypt. His father, Pharaoh Akhenaten, married his own sister, and Tut was also married to one of his sisters or possibly his half-sister. This close familial union likely passed down harmful genetic mutations, resulting in Tut's severe health problems. While some theories suggested that King Tut died from a chariot accident, more recent research suggests his weakened state from inbreeding and malaria played a significant role in his death. Number 10. Families in Short Creek. In a remote town on the Utah-Arizona border, a hidden tragedy unfolded. Short Creek, a place where polygamy was a way of life, became a breeding ground for devastating genetic disorders. How? It all started with a dangerous mix of inbreeding. Back in the mid-1800s, Mormon leader Brigham Young encouraged polygamy. His followers, fleeing persecution, settled in Short Creek in the 1930s. Men took multiple wives, often marrying cousins. With a small, isolated community, the gene pool shrank, and the damage began. In the early 1990s, pediatric neurologist Theodore Tarby uncovered something shocking. A young boy was brought to him with strange facial features and severe developmental delays. At first, doctors couldn't figure it out, but when Tarby tested the boy's urine, the diagnosis was horrifying: fumarase deficiency, a rare and deadly genetic disorder. And it wasn't just one case. Soon, more children from Short Creek showed the same signs, 8 more kids, all suffering from the same devastating condition. Fumarase deficiency attacks the brain. It causes seizures, severe physical disabilities, and developmental delays. Children can't walk, talk, or sit up. Some can't even crawl. They need constant care, feeding tubes, and full-time support. But how did this deficiency begin? The condition is caused by inheriting 2 faulty genes, one from each parent. And in Short Creek, parents were often related, sometimes even cousins. The result was a genetic nightmare. As the community continued to marry within itself, these diseases spread like wildfire. But it didn't stop there. Fumarase deficiency wasn't the only disorder. Doctors found more genetic conditions, people suffering from cognitive impairments, physical disabilities, and seizures, all linked to years of inbreeding. Short Creek's gene pool had become dangerously small. Today, 75% of the town's 7,000 residents are related to just 2 families, the Jessups and the Barlows. As a result, there is a devastating rise in genetic disorders. And yet, this tragedy holds a strange twist. Short Creek has become a goldmine for genetic research. Scientists are discovering new disease-causing genes, potentially leading to breakthroughs in medicine. Number 9. The Blue Fugates. Did you know there's a family in Kentucky that, for generations, was known for their blue skin? Yep, blue skin. It's not a fairy tale, and it's not Photoshop either. We're talking about the Blue Fugates, and their story is as wild as it sounds. So, here's how it all started. In the early 1800s, a man named Martin Fugate moved from France to the hills of Kentucky. He settled down with a woman named Elizabeth Smith, and together they had 7 kids. Sounds pretty typical, right? But 4 of those kids had something incredibly unusual. They were born with blue skin. You're probably asking, how does that happen? Well, it all comes down to a rare blood disorder called methemoglobinemia. In simple terms, it means their blood couldn't carry oxygen properly, and instead of the usual red blood cells, their skin turned a bluish tint because of it. But that's not all. This condition also comes with other symptoms like fatigue, seizures, and developmental delays. For some, though, the blue skin was the most noticeable thing. Now, here's where things get, well, a little complicated. The Fugates lived in a super isolated part of Kentucky, where people didn't travel much, and the options for marriage were pretty limited. Over time, family members started marrying other family members. Martin and Elizabeth's own son married his aunt. As awkward as it sounds, it wasn't that unusual in those days when people didn't have many choices. But this meant that the rare gene causing the blue skin kept getting passed down through generations. Here's the kicker: today, if someone in the family does have blue skin, doctors can treat it. A simple pill of methylene blue can restore the normal red blood cells and make the blue disappear in just a few minutes. Imagine being able to change your skin color like that. Sounds crazy, right? Number 7. Extinct Neanderthals. Though the last known Neanderthals went extinct some 40,000 years ago, genomics has allowed us to learn a lot about these near-human ancestors. Consider the instance of one Neanderthal lady who lived in the Alai Mountains of Siberia. According to 2013 research published in Nature, genetic evidence extracted from her 50,000-year-old tooth revealed that her parents were likely half-siblings. Her DNA suggests several additional instances of inbreeding in the familial line, indicating that Neanderthals, Denisovans, another near relative, and anatomically modern humans were already interbreeding at this stage, perhaps providing much-needed genetic variety. But why were Neanderthals so inbred? It's not like they were forming huge dynastic alliances throughout the Ice Age in Europe and Asia. According to the available data, Neanderthals lived in somewhat isolated tiny groups. In reality, that could have been the issue. With so few neighboring partners to pick from, Neanderthals may have ended up dating largely cousins and even closer relatives. According to a 2019 study in PLOS One, this may have resulted in a drop in reproductive fitness in subsequent generations, leaving Neanderthal groups with declining population numbers. They would also have been more susceptible to genetic abnormalities and may not have been as resilient in the face of environmental stressors as the more genetically varied modern humans who finally occupied their land. Number 6. The Kingston Clan. At least some Kingston Clan patriarchs believe that power must be preserved at any cost. Charles Eldon Kingston formed the Salt Lake City-based group, also known as the Order, the Davis County Cooperative Society, and the Latter-day Church of Christ, in 1935. It has since reportedly isolated its members through a powerful and occasionally violent combination of racism, apocalyptic fear-mongering, a rigidly enforced patriarchal hierarchy, and anti-government rhetoric. With ties to the early Mormon Church, current Kingston followers practice polygamy. Eldon's brother, Ortel, is said to have fostered incest to maintain the family's apparent purity, even having offspring with 2 half-sisters and 2 nieces. His descendants have carried on the tradition, marrying half-siblings, cousins, and nieces, many of whom were only teenagers. Though Utah state law no longer considers polygamy among consenting individuals to be a problem, forced and underage marriages remain criminal offenses. Members of the Kingston organization, whose spokesmen have fiercely contested the claims, have been convicted of criminal tax fraud. In 2023, Utah's polygamous Kingston Clan combined incest and white supremacy with old-fashioned business. Yet, members are notoriously tight-lipped about family matters, even failing to put fathers on birth certificates to make tracking familial links more difficult. The group's closed-off character has made examining the impacts of inbreeding impossible, although it has allegedly produced offspring with vision problems, unusually tiny heads, and dwarfism, among other effects. Subscriber pick. Inbreeding has been a part of human history since primitive times, but the people in this photo seem to have mated with animals. While modern scientific ethics forbid breeding humans and animals, scientists may be secretly experimenting with it. What would be the outcome of such horrendous cross-species breeding? Do you think that in the near future, it won't remain as big of a taboo as it is today? Number 5. Ferdinand with the large head. What if we told you that one of the most powerful emperors in European history might have been doomed from the start because of the very family he was born into? Ferdinand of Austria wasn't just the ruler of an empire. He was also a product of extreme inbreeding, which left him with shocking physical and mental struggles that were hard to ignore. Born in 1793, Ferdinand's parents weren't just royal. They were double first cousins, meaning all of their grandparents were the same. This tangled bloodline might explain the severe health problems he suffered throughout his life. Ferdinand wasn't just another royal. He had a massive head, literally. This was caused by a condition called hydrocephalus, where fluid builds up around the brain. As a result, he not only had a head that seemed too big for his body but also had speech difficulties, frequent seizures, and even developmental delays. His health issues were so visible that anyone who looked at him could tell something was off. But it gets even more dramatic. On his wedding day in 1831, Ferdinand had a seizure in front of his bride, Maria Anna of Piedmont, Sardinia, who was also a distant cousin. This was a royal disaster. Despite this, Ferdinand managed to push through and rule. However, he and his wife never had children. His genetic issues made it impossible for him to carry on the royal bloodline. Despite his severe challenges, Ferdinand wasn't a villain. In fact, he was known for his gentle nature and was relatively popular as emperor. But in 1848, the political turmoil in the Austrian Empire became too much for him to handle. He abdicated the throne, stepping down in favor of his nephew. Here's the twist: Ferdinand lived an astonishingly long life, passing away in 1875 at the age of 82. His story shows just how costly the pursuit of power through family ties can be.